you doing?
Just throwing your empty bottle in the garbage.
Don't you know plastics go in the blue container?
Mayor Frank Jackson and the City of Cleveland are committed to keeping your neighborhood clean and green through the use of the city-issued trash and recycling carts. It's safe, convenient, and mandatory. For more information, contact the Cleveland Division of Waste Collection at 216-664-3717.
How did you get to be so smart?
I had a good teacher.
Listen up, Cleveland. Listen up, Cleveland.
Welcome to Listen Up Cleveland. I'm your host, Leah Haslage. Today we're going to show you how aviation and space is so important right here in Cleveland. First up, we're at Burke Lakefront Airport at the Women's Air and Space Museum.
Dayton has a large history where aviation is concerned, and there were some women who were keen on ensuring that women weren't forgotten. And their roles, you know, in aviation were, and aerospace as it's come along, you know, were part of what the discussion was about. And so in 1986, they formed the museum. Yeah, I had to think for a minute. And then a couple of years later, they needed more space, and they made an inquiry, and they found out this space was available here in Cleveland at Burke. And so those women who were instrumental in guiding that process, you know, were able to secure a lease, and we've been in this space ever since here in Cleveland. We are really focused on trying to ensure that people in the Cleveland area, Northeast Ohio actually, know that, first of all, that we exist as a museum, a historical museum, and our focus is on women in aviation and aerospace. And we have a space wall that is dedicated to women who have been astronauts, and it's a little overflow now because we've caught up with one side of the wall, so we had to get a little flip chart and use some other things, and we have different exhibits. The exhibits are open 7 days a week here in the concourse at Burke Lakefront Airport from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening. And so it's free. People are welcome to come down here and take a look at it. But if you wanted a tour, a guided tour, you can call it and make a reservation, and we have a small fee, a $2 fee per person, for those who come in to get the personalized view of everything that we have. We think we are doing an excellent job in focusing on women and letting people know, you know, who's been doing things in aviation and aerospace. And a lot of times when you're talking to people, they know about Amelia Earhart, they know about Bessie Coleman, but we have some behind the scenes women, you know, and we were fortunate to have another female astronaut come in and speak to us last year, Stephanie Wilson, who I didn't know about until we found out she was on an assignment here in Cleveland at NASA. And we contacted her, and she came and spoke. We had overflow crowd here to hear her speak, and it was just fascinating, you know. So, you know, when we are able to bring in speakers that, you know, people have an interest in, we try to do that. And then we just kind of do little outreaches to schools and groups to see if we can keep them involved. And I think when they get down here, they're amazed at what we have, you know, and what's here. And most people say, well, I didn't even know that this was here, which is true, you know. And I said, well, one of my goals is for you not to say that anymore. You can say, oh, I've been there before. You know, you need to go and see what they have to offer. So that would be what I would encourage the listeners to think about and come down and visit us. We have a lot of clothes and artifacts that they wore. You know, we have Catherine Wright's dress, which is like a bridal dress, more or less, but she wore that dress when she went to the White House with her brothers, you know, after the inaugural flights and things. So we have just things like that. We have an exhibit right over here, and this lady was a model as well as a pilot, you know, and so we put that together last year because some of her family members were from Ireland and they wanted to come over here and see, you know, what she had done, and so we got that displayed. The purple putty cat. And this lady was a housewife who flew, and she built this plane herself and flew it until, you know, she had to stop because of some other health challenges and things. But she did that on her own, and you know, that's the unique thing about a lot of what we have here at the airport, because you know, women were kind of kept in, they were supposed to stay in their place more or less, you know. And even one of the displays down there is an outfit that I just love. This lady made it herself because women couldn't fly in dresses. So she made the pantaloons where they buttoned. And so when she got out of the cockpit, she could button it up and it looked just like a skirt or something, you know. Just the creative things that they've done, you know, in order to keep themselves going with that. And then we have some flight simulators behind me that, you know, you can pretend you're flying. Like, we usually use those for the kids. They like to do that. It's trophies and different things from the air races, you know, that are still talked about, you know, and so it's just a lot of history here. And I think that's what has fascinated me about this museum, because I never envisioned myself being at a museum like this. And then to think about the experiences I had before I came here and how they link together has just been, it's been rewarding to me, you know. So I'm coming up on 2 years here, and I've always thought that when I retired, okay, that's it, I'll sit down. But I do like to stay involved because I think it's so important for the young people to know. And so if I can give something back by just being in their presence and talking to them, I've got time to do that. And that's how I look at things. The history of the aerospace industry started. The women who were instrumental in doing the testing and all of the things that made it possible for the astronauts to go up. There's a whole historical wall and some pictures of them, and I think that's very important, you know, because many people don't realize that women were the impetus for being able to let the men fly in space. And, you know, Congress decided they didn't want women to go after the testing had been completed successfully, you know. So it's something to think about. You know, women have led the way in many ways, but in many ways they get pushed to the side. You know, I won't say pushed to the back because they wouldn't let that happen, but kind of pushed to the side, you know. Okay, all the heavy lifting is done, so now others step forward because it's time to get the glory kind of thing, you know. So, but those would be the two main things that I would say are very important. And we also have the WASP, who were the women that flew the airplanes during World War II. We have, you know, an area dedicated to them and a statue, a bronze statue. There's only 3, and we have one of the 3, you know. And so that's here, you know, as something that people can see and explore.
The women recognized throughout the museum aren't the only ones that have significance in shaping women's role in aviation and aerospace. Mrs. Williams herself has played a key role, having been the first minority female in the state of Ohio to be hired onto the Federal Aviation's Air Traffic Controller Training Program.
I worked at Cleveland Hopkins as well as Cleveland Air Route Traffic Control Center in Oberlin, Ohio. And I retired with 38 years of service there and had a lot of good experiences as I did my job there and attained certain positions. And how I found out about it was reading a magazine. Ebony magazine had an article about recruiting minorities and women, and I was already a federal employee, so I looked into that, and I was fortunate enough to get the information I needed, pass the exam and the physical and the psychological, all those things, and move on into my career, which was exciting, and I learned a lot, and I hope that the legacy that I have with it is that I was able to leave a lot in place so that others could forge ahead with good, successful careers themselves. And there are different women who have come through Cleveland because of the piloting of aircraft and the air races and things. Our board president is an instrumental lady in ownership of an airport, you know, herself and flying. Connie Luda is her name. And many times people don't understand the uniqueness of Cleveland's history in aviation as far as the first tower and the radar and all these different things that are associated with aviation. Many of them started right here in this city. And then you think about manufacturing and all the companies we had that made the parts and all of those things for aircraft. So, you know, women worked in those plants too, you know, so I think that it's just important to take a look at that, you know. Coming from my history with aviation, I think sometimes I would get the feeling that people, you know, it was kind of like, oh, that's not really important, you know, and until we had some interesting things happen that brought air traffic control up to the fold where people would look at it, then they kind of paid a little bit of attention to it, you know. But, you know, as I would tell even my daughter, there are times when I've had a lot of responsibility in my hands and on my mind, you know, and it's just as important as some of these other professions out here. And so, you know, keeping that in mind, I'd like to see our young people, the young men and young women, explore this, because sometimes you can come up with a dual career. Maybe you do go to school to be a doctor, but it would be good to have your pilot's license too, because now you're twofold. You know, you could be a nurse, you could be a lawyer, you could be a teacher, all those things. And then if you connect those, you know, maybe the employer that's looking at the application says, oh yeah, I do need someone in education, but here's a twofold. If I hire this person, they got, you know, a pilot's license, and we've got a fleet of airplanes out there that maybe we can put them in that and move them in that direction, so we got 2 for 1, you know. So that's why I think it's important for people to know about this museum, because I think they would get a little bit more insight on what really is going on in the aviation world.
So as you can see, women have played such a significant role in aviation and space, especially right here in Cleveland. When we return to Listen Up Cleveland, we're going to head over to NASA Glenn Research Center to see how space exploration impacts our community.
Listen up, Cleveland.
The inherent right to work is one of the elemental privileges of a free people, endowed as our nation is with abundant physical resources, and inspired as it should be with the high purpose to make those resources and opportunities available for the enjoyment of all. We approach this problem of reemployment with the real hope of finding a better answer than we have now.
Listen up, Cleveland.
The NASA Glenn Research Center in Cleveland first opened in 1942. Today it has become a leader in research and development, not only space, but in things we use every day.
NASA Glenn, formerly NASA Lewis, when it started almost 75 years ago, was the Aircraft Engine Research Lab. That was part of the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics. Basically, as flight took off, no pun intended, we were falling behind Europe. And the U.S. decided we need to apply resources to it. It started with the NACA, which our center began as a part of. NASA started in '58, and our center was brought into the larger fold of NASA centers, and that's really where our work on the space side took off, with early work on rockets that are still used today. One just launched last week that NASA Glenn had not figured it out 50 years ago called the Centaur. We would not have explored planets, would have not launched national security payloads. So 75 years of rich history that has a great future. So part of what we try and do across everything, and NASA Glenn really works in aeronautics and space. So in order to test things safely first, before we put people on them, we want to test them on the ground here. And so when you develop a technology, you have to test it to really the nth degree for safety. And being able to test that stuff helps get it infused faster. But to test things like they fly in the air, fly in space, has some pretty dramatic test facilities like the one we have right here. So you do think of astronauts and you kind of see the end product, but there's so many years of lead up to that technology, to testing it, to pushing it to its boundaries so that you really understand how it operates once the astronauts or even any of us are flying on a plane. You have to experience that here first. NASA Glenn, from its inception, which in 2016 will be 75 years old, and our first charter was to improve the performance of aircraft engines. And ironically, we're still doing that today, 74 plus years later, almost 75. And we do that by putting the engines in test facilities. So to the engine, it looks like it's flying on the bottom of a wing, because it's got air coming at it at different conditions, and you can throttle the engine up and down and see how it performs, how it sounds. So it does go beyond just space like you see behind me. It's the aeronautics side as well. We continue to lead in that now, making the engines more efficient, burn better so we have less impact on the environment, make them quieter so that when they fly overhead they don't sound as loud. We're taking that on the aircraft side to the next step, which is electric propulsion for aircraft. So getting away from all gas turbines, all the jet fuel engines. We're also doing that in space. And NASA Glenn, just like we do on the aeronautics side, leads in space exploration propulsion as well, in solar electric propulsion. So what that really means is we take a gas, we put a really high voltage to it and ionize the gas, and shoot the ions back out of an engine. And it's incredibly efficient, so if you think of it like miles per gallon on your car, it's about 10 times more efficient than the big chemical rockets that we've seen to date. And what that'll allow us to do is have less mass being launched, but it'll go farther. So we can send, for instance, you never put humans on it because it's really slow, but the efficiency is what you sacrifice for the speed. And we can send everything the astronauts need out to Mars, and then the astronauts can just go. It's like a logistics train. So if you think of it like, I'm going to go camping, and I'm going to send all my supplies ahead of me, and then I'm just going to meet it. That's what we can do, and that's one of the technologies that's tested in the facility right behind me. It does make it more sustainable also, because then it's more, you're sending more there, you can get more there, which means you can stay longer, which means your missions aren't as frequent, you can do more science, you can learn what it's like to really live in deep space. So I think it goes from materials, you figure the materials that we develop to work inside an aircraft engine, really high temperature, high pressure, inside a rocket engine, can be used to help manufacture materials for everyday life, from what you make cars with, how you improve aluminum, how you improve hip and shoulder implants that I talked about, both materials and the coatings. Everyday direct TV, so satellite TV, is the formation of that was right here in NASA Glenn. The first demonstration of that technology, we have an Emmy for that sits over in our headquarters building. So it's big things, it's little things. The space program, I believe, gives back to the taxpayer quite a bit.
Giving back to the community is important to the staff at NASA, offering various programs for students and professionals. And having the research center right here in Cleveland is significant for the city.
It's measured so many ways, our significance. It's measured in the prominence of having a NASA center. There's only 9 in the entire country. It's measured in the economic impact we make, which is over $1 billion right here in Northeast Ohio. And then it's the impact we make when you hear planes fly over, when you watch your satellite TV, when you think about the future of exploration. It's that inspirational piece as well for the kids that are growing up in this area, like I did. I've always loved planes and grew up watching planes take off and land right at Hopkins, and grew up in the early days of the shuttle and the end of the Apollo, so it's always been an inspiration to me. City of Cleveland's been a tremendous partner with us on many levels. We've worked with a federal program called Adopt a City, where the city and the county have put up dollars in loans to companies to push their products out the door, and we've donated some of our technician and engineering time to solve the problems that the companies have experienced, to help them get their product into the marketplace. We're on round 2 right now, planning for round 3. The job creation has started. It's, I think, around 66 jobs right now, but it's $30+ million of outside investment that have come in these companies, all the way from how to print better vinyl records, which I know is a little foreign in today's world, but that's alignment of the presses for the one company, all the way to improving the piles that are going in on the new Interbelt Bridge with a company called Pile Dynamics, which is putting sensors in the piles so that they can measure how the bridge performs over time and reduce the maintenance potentially on the bridge. So every time I'm going to drive over that bridge when it's done, I'm going to think of the fact that NASA played a role in it with the city and the county. We all live in this community, so we all benefit from being a part of things that enable the economy, both here in this area and across the U.S. as well. The taxpayers invest in us for inspiration, I believe. That's one thing we give, but our technologies have direct applications in everyday life, from the inception of the space program in 1958 through today and beyond. We have tours here from April to October, one Saturday a month, and we'll highlight one of our facilities to bring people through. So you get on a bus, you come to the facility, and what's really cool is you get to meet the engineers and facility people who love their job, just like I love working for NASA, who do the work every day, and they'll explain every angle of the facilities that we have out here. And one time we'll show some of the space facilities, another time aeronautics facilities. We'll also show where we communicate with the space station on a daily basis, which is just across the street from where we stand today. So it's a really great opportunity to kind of go beyond the seeing it on the internet or anything. You can actually touch it and talk to the people who get to work on it, who are very proud every day. We should be proud that we have a NASA center right here. We should be proud that we have NASA in this country. Everybody talks about, you know, the space shuttle ended, you know, NASA's done. It's absolutely not done. We're flying by Pluto, right? We're going to go by Pluto at almost 14 kilometers per second. But that's the only way we could get there, and we're going to see Pluto like we've never seen it before. We have astronauts on the space station that are living now for a year on the space station. We have aircraft that are flying. Every time you hear an aircraft fly over, NASA has played a role in that aircraft in some form or another. So the excitement and prominence of having NASA is a reason to come out here. It's just cool to see. I walk around here and I'm amazed by the things that we do here all the time. So people should know what's in their backyard. People should celebrate that. And we're trying to be a big part of the community. We'd like the community to see the things that we do here, which is why we open our doors for those tours.
So as you can see, there's always something new and different happening right here at NASA, and you yourself can check it out on their tour. And at the end, you're going to land right here at the gift shop to get some cool things like astronaut ice cream and, of course, a t-shirt. Thanks for watching Listen Up Cleveland. I'm Leah Haslage.
It's illegal to sweep yard debris into a catch basin. It causes water pollution and sewer backup. Use biodegradable bags or redistribute lawn and leaf clippings for fertilizer. If you see someone dumping waste into a catch basin, report it immediately. Remember, only rain down the storm drain.
Thanks for watching TV 20. We are Cleveland.